It's called Evening Song, and it's from his opera Satyagraha, which is about Mahatma Gandhi. And it's this beautiful melody that's just ascending, like and it just keeps repeating and ascending. I was like losing my mind.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Glam Reaper podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Muldowney, aka the Glam Reaper. And on today's episode, I have the beautiful Concetta, all the way live from New York. Concetta, welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Thanks for having me here.
You're so very welcome. So tell us, well, other than it being bitterly cold in New York at the moment, which I have to say I'm in sunny Florida at the moment because very excitingly, Muldowney Memorials is expanding into Florida. So if you know anybody, please let us know. So yeah, we've been our social media feed has been sort of throwing people off, I think, with images of snow one minute and sort of images of sunshine the next. So we're a bit all over the place. It is kind of wild to me that in the one country on the same side, the weather can be so vastly different. But welcome to America, especially at the moment. Anyway, Concetta, you and I, our paths crossed in an interesting way. Tell us exactly what it is that you do.
So, I am a violinist. I've played violin since I was 4 years old. I'm also a singer and a music composer. And I've had a long career as a performer for private events, weddings, various events throughout New York City and the metropolitan area. And as time went on, I became more and more specialized in doing music specifically for funerals, memorial services, and celebrations of life. And so our paths crossed, Jennifer, through a mutual friend who is a funeral director on Staten Island, Jeff Holcomb. And he and I got in touch about writing a curriculum to educate funeral directors on how to best utilize music as part of ceremony. And this topic is growing and changing as we live in a culture and a society that isn't necessarily religious or traditional. And we need to look at how artistic practices such as music reflect the evolving and changing culture. So anyway, Jeff Holcomb said, you have to meet Jennifer Muldowney. You two will have so much in common. And yeah, we just hit it off.
Yeah, and he's an absolute dote. We had him on, I think it was the last season of the podcast. So he's such a great guy. And so, his company, Continuing Vision, in honor of his son and everything. It's just such a beautiful story. So if you haven't already listened to that episode or seen that episode, please check it out. Continuing Vision is his company, and there is much more we'll be doing with him in the future. But it's so, yeah, like to me, when we met and we started talking, everything that I do, so whether it's the celebrant work or the memorial planning work, typically involves some element of music. And to me, I often, when I'm talking with families, they'll ask, well, maybe if they don't have a huge budget or whatever, like, where can we spend our budget? Like, where is it the most worthwhile? And I mean, food and drink is obviously great, and it's something I have high value in. But I think lighting and music are two things that massively impact any event. Like, they can change a wedding from being, a happy event to a somber event to like a wild, raucous event. And so I feel like with a funeral as well, and especially when people hire a quote unquote event planner for their funeral, they sort of, the amount of times it's been said to me, I don't want it to look like a wedding, Jen. I don't want it to be like a wedding. And I always say there's a really fine line between celebrating a life and having a party and mourning a loss. And it's so important to get both right. And I feel like a wedding planner can absolutely organize a funeral. Absolutely, logistically very similar. However, there are nuances that have to be taken into account. And I think mourning a loss is one of the biggest ones. And for me, I think music has a massive impact on the mood, raising it, lowering it. I mean, oh God, I've been brought to tears by some powerful performances. Even I've no shyness in saying this. People know I've aired all sorts of things on this podcast, but just recently I was at Disney, and a huge Disney fan, huge. And we went to the fireworks in the evening, and it was just fireworks and music. I mean, visually it was stunning, but it was the music, and along with the sort of the sparks of light. I was a mess. I was so emotional. It just brought up so much for me. It's just the power of sound. It's incredible. So tell us a little bit about.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you bring up those comparisons between wedding celebrations versus funerals and memorial services, because as a violinist, I get asked to play so many weddings. I play the ceremony. I also play the cocktail hour. Um, and I work for a lot of different contractors and event companies. And what I noticed is that there are hundreds of wedding music companies. And sometimes you'll see something on their website, like in the bottom corner in tiny print, like we also do funerals. And I think to myself, the funeral is such a, not just funeral, but memorial service. It's such a delicate event that requires a totally different approach to have the effect, like you said, of helping, the people in the room bond as a community and feel their grief communally. And the musician takes center stage in a way, in the sense that people are really focusing on the music. And the music is not simply something in the background to create a vibe. It's
Yeah,
really there to process the feelings and the emotions. And I thought, how come there's nobody really specializing in this?
yeah,
Um, Other than religious institutions, you can go to a Catholic church, you can go to a synagogue, they'll have a music director on staff. But if you're somebody who doesn't feel comfortable in a religious space, or you have an interfaith family situation, it's nice if you can find a musician who is versed in different spiritual traditions or agnostic ideas about death and grief, and create something that is truly a reflection of your loved one's life. So it's not like a stock cookie cutter, Catholic mass kind of thing. Um, a one size fits all kind of approach. So that was where I got the idea to start my organization, which is called Sound and Memory. It's the title of my organization, Sound and Memory, actually comes from the name of a traditional Sicilian folk song. And it's actually a Sardinian folk song, but
say it.
it's called Sono e Memoria, and it is it means sound and memory, which is the name of my organization, and it's about music, stirring up your feelings and your memories of your lost loved one.
Yeah,
And so usually I sing the Sono e Memoria song if I'm doing a workshop or a presentation, to give people an idea of, where I'm philosophically coming from in terms of how I think music can be a tool to facilitate the grief process. But yeah, I started doing this work by word of mouth. Honestly, I've always been the person in my own family who gets called to do funerals. And I just realized that I was the person who was sort of comfortable doing it. And then the word of mouth got out to a broader network of people. And the funeral, there are many funerals that stand out in my mind, but one was a funeral that I did for a 30-year-old young woman who died of COVID. And she was a visual artist, like pretty well known. And her funeral was packed. There were hundreds of people who came from the arts and music scene in New York City. And it was at St. Mark's in the Bowery. And it was this absolutely heartbreaking event for the community. And so what I did to prepare for this event was I interviewed various members of this young woman's family, including her friends as well. And I put together this quite oddball list of music that really seemingly had nothing to do with each other. So we had, um, a Christina Perry song, and we had a Philip Glass song. We had Hildegard von Bingen. It was just a lot of different things. And then I wrote arrangements for a 5-piece chamber ensemble. So we had
Oh,
clarinet, flute, piano, violin, and cello. And I wrote arrangements, and then I worked with the young woman's mother to pace the music with the readings. And it was just what I realized, commanding, 300 people who are grieving in a room. We needed to have those breaks of music, and the music could flow at any pace, or we could decide to repeat, or we could decide to cut it short, because we were doing it live. It wasn't a recording. So we were able to actually respond in real time to the feelings happening in the room. So for example, the closing song was the Philip Glass. It's called Evening Song, and it's from his opera Satyagraha, which is about Mahatma Gandhi. And it's this beautiful melody that's just ascending, like, and it just keeps repeating and ascending. I was like losing my mind in that room. I was like 300 people, and we're all just like ascending with Jenny, and
wow, I just got shivers. I love that.
yes, I got shivers. And you can see there's a video of it on my YouTube channel. It's not the best recording, but it kind of captures like the feeling in the room. And even though none of the musicians in the ensemble knew her, it felt like we were with her. And I think it's important that people, regardless of your background or religious affiliation or spiritual beliefs, can have this experience of bonding as a community in your grief. And also, like, music is language. It's an alternate form of communication.
Yeah.
When we can't use our words to express the feelings, music can be this thing that can carry us to another space, another time, and it can stretch how long time feels, or it can make time feel shorter. So that's the power of how music can flow within a ceremony with such a difficult and heavy experience. Not just the death of a young person, but everyone in that room considering their own mortality. This could have happened to me.
Yeah.
And what are our values? And why are we all being so petty when life can be cut so short? I mean, there was a lot of those kind of speeches happening in that room. And yeah, really, I had done a lot of funerals, and I could talk about a million of them, but that was the one where I was like, this is what I want to do. Like,
Yeah.
full time. This is what I want to do.
Yeah. It sounds like you had the similar calling, or however anointing that I had. It's just exactly as you said. It's I'm actually really bad at music myself. I can't hold a note. Like, I'm famous for it. I can't hold a note. And like in school, I mean, we trained, they trained us to do the tin whistle. God, I was terrible.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
it was terrible. I would use my breath, like make the whoo, 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 like, it was so bad. So, but what I find again so fascinating and humbling for me is I'm not musical. I don't like everything you do and you are. I have nothing for, right? But there is music in all of us, and music transforms my mood, and it still is a language I have. It's just my language sounds different to yours, and my understanding. Like, I've had really close friends who are so musical, and we're so opposite. but we still connect at musical festivals, and we still, like, I can still go and enjoy her bands because she enjoys them and that sort of thing. And it's the ultimate connector. And exactly as you said so eloquently, it's at a funeral a lot of the time, and I feel like especially in New York nowadays, a lot of time you're going to a funeral and maybe you're going with friends, but you don't know anybody in there. You're going because your friend or somebody you worked with or some sort of a colleague has passed, and you're there for that. And what I think is so incredible about celebrant work, honestly, but genuinely, obviously, with what I do in event planning as well, is that a funeral should make it a community, like bring everybody together. So like when you're standing up on stage behind a podium, whether you're a celebrant or whatever, that the service resonates with everybody in there. And that's the reason why I encourage pre-planning, because if I pre-plan my own service, Concetta can come and see a part of Jen, the Jen she knew in that service, as well as can John and Alex and Anna and all these other people who knew Jen. And suddenly you feel connected. Whereas if it's just, and it's no ill wills towards religion and stuff, but if it's just like what I was used to when growing up, with it's just the Catholic, the priest up there and saying the usual rites, there's nothing in there that's resonating about Jen, quote unquote Jen, for me, right? Like that's it's regurgitating the same thing. Now, it's not to say if Jennifer was somebody who went to mass every day and all that sort of stuff, then yes, then that's, I see Jen in that. That makes sense to me. But you want to be going to a funeral and it to sort of speak to the person who's passed and connect everybody in that room. And I just think music absolutely does that. I mean, I have had and this is just a little fun part of the job that I do, and I'm sure it's similar for you, but there have been songs that have been ruined for me because they've been played at funerals. And when I say ruined, I mean I'm a bag of tears when they come on. I mean, there's that what's his name, Benny Boone, or I see, I'm terrible, I never even know names of things, but that incredible song that was out, was it last year or the year before? It was a hit and it was played there at the Grammys, I think it was. He played it live, bawling, crying because it had been at a funeral that was just so emotional for me. So it's just, music has just got that power to bring us up, as you said, like ascending with her. I mean, I got total chills there, but it can bring up and down our mood, and it's just such a beautiful part of a service. And I will say, and I know obviously you do majority of your stuff live, I'm sure. But even when it's just an iPad playing a song or something, it can still have an impact. Like one of the things when I'm doing a celebrant, talking over the service with a family as a celebrant, is I'll often ask them, is there a song you want at the beginning of the service and at the end of the service? And then is there a song in the middle, if you'd like something at some point in the middle? And sometimes yes, sometimes no. Sometimes there's one song and that's just it. So we decide, is it better to have it at the beginning, middle, or end? But what I notice, and even me as a celebrant, is in that moment, in the middle of the service, right? So I've gotten up, I've maybe done a welcome, I've had a couple of people speaking, we've said a prayer, maybe we've done a poem. And now I will say, and now we're going to have this piece of music that meant so much to Sarah. And I sit down, and so we play the music. Now, whether there's vocals in it or not, if there's vocals, even if you've heard that song 100 million times, every word in that song will resonate with you in a totally different way, and you'll hear so much more meaning from the song. And if there's no vocals in it, the power of it's just, yeah.
Yeah, I was thinking too about first of all, yeah, I agree. Recorded music can be extremely powerful and useful, and is a really accessible way to utilize music as part of a service. And part of what I do with Sound and Memory is I also do playlist making with people. So if somebody wants to work with me to choose the songs that they want for any event or occasion, I can create a playlist and also help them figure out the pacing of the music. So it is really good to know, recorded music is accessible. And also, if you're on a budget, you can hire one musician. Just having like a solo violin or a solo cello or solo trumpet can just make a huge difference to have like a person who is delivering the music. But one thing that came to my mind as you were speaking was about how memorials and funerals can be, I mean, just like any big family gatherings, can be a really contentious space.
Yes.
Really, especially if the person who died was very young. There's a lot of resentment and anger and blame. There can be, and there also can be just a lot of disagreements. And I think that, but what both you and I do is we try our best. We try, utilize the tools we have to transcend that and to get everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
Like, this is what we're here for. Because that's, I know that this funeral that I did that I was telling you about, people were angry at each other. There was a lot of blame. You stressed her out. That's why she got sick. You did this, you did that. So it was like, I kind of gathered that from doing my pre-planning interviews with all the different people involved in her life. And I thought, okay, like, I'm going to be really democratic about this and include everyone's perspective, but through their chosen song, through their music.
Yes, love which is that. Not a controversial
thing. It's something that we can connect over. So yeah, I think that is also like an interesting challenge that I have faced, doing funerals versus weddings, for example.
Yeah, there's they're both very fascinating spaces to be in terms of family dynamics, shall we say. Definitely very interesting spaces, but I do find there's a finality to funerals that sort of, I think, panics people, and exactly as you said, sort of mum's already passed, this is my last chance to sort of do something for her, whatever. There's sort of a time continuum that people are kind of up against, and that's it. Like, part of 100% part of our job is mediation, negotiation, sometimes compromise, and it's actually something that I talk about in my celebrant training course, which is, you are not there to put forward your religious views, your political views, or to take sides. That is not what that your role is. Your role is to listen. Like, I love that famous saying of, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, that you should listen and use your mouth in that order. Because really a lot of these people that you're dealing with in grief just want to be listened to and just want to feel heard. And there is, exactly as you said, there are ways to compromise with people and have everybody feel seen and feel participated in the service. And music is just a beautiful.
Some of the events that I've done have also been living funerals. I call them living funerals. They're not it's not like people approach me saying, oh, I'm going to do a living funeral. But what I'm really referring to is a celebration of life for someone who is extremely elderly, where everyone in the room has a kind of anticipatory grief.
Yeah.
And I distinctly remember playing violin for a woman, a Jamaican American immigrant woman who was 100 years old. And they zoomed her family from Jamaica. So they had on the video screen the family from Jamaica, and then the family from Brooklyn were in the room. And they had a representative from a local city government who gave her an award. Like, if you live to 100 and you're born in New York City, or I don't remember exactly what it is, but she won some kind of like official certificate just for being 100, which was really cool.
In Ireland, they actually get a check.
Oh, so the family requested that I play Somewhere Over the Rainbow. And I kind of did a strolling violin thing, and I walked around the room, and I was kind of, playing for the different people. And I turn around and she's crying. She's crying because, that was like her childhood favorite song. And so this is a celebration of life where the person whose favorite song you're playing isn't deceased yet. They're there and they can experience it with you. So that's a really powerful experience and a different kind of grief.
Yeah.
The anticipatory grief.
Yeah, the living funeral is an interesting trend recently. I think I don't know that she started it, but I know she's one of the first people that I ever heard of doing it. Barbara Corcoran, the Shark Tank lady, did it for her 70th, I think. So I think that put it on the map. Although I've told a few people about it recently, there was a journalist and everything, and they'd never heard of her doing it, and I was like, how? Like, why is it such a big thing? She came out often, a casket.
Yeah, my friend's grandmother had, she called it an indie festival, INDY, I'm not dead yet. Because she said, I want to see everybody.
Yeah.
Like, basically, let's do my funeral before I go. I think it was like, probably 5 years before she actually passed away. And I think those big celebrations, the kind of people who choose to do things like that are just wonderful people.
Yeah.
They're just embracing life. They're embracing death. They're embracing love. I mean, you and I have talked about this. There's not a huge market for doing celebrations of life. There's not tons of people demanding this kind of work, but the people who do, it's life-changing, actually meeting those people who are confronting and facing their mortality head on and really living in the moment.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I mean, when I did my 15-year celebration of being in business, we did a sort of pseudo funeral. Like, I basically got to live out the music I would choose for my funeral. I had my little Winnie the Pooh video, like just, I gave my own eulogy, but it was all work orientated. Like, the speakers weren't necessarily, my speakers, but I think it's a wonderful idea. Because it's also, I have actually thought about this. And I thought, the interesting thing about it, though, is unlike a wedding or a typical birthday, if you're actually going to blatantly call it your sort of living funeral, think about it. If you got an invitation to that and you don't show up, that's... I just feel like there's way more pressure to show up to that than there are for any other event, because even when somebody passes, sometimes people just can't show up for whatever reason. And I don't want to say, well, the person's passed, so who cares? But, it's not like they can come back and get angry at you that you didn't even bother coming to my funeral, although maybe they can, depending on what you believe. They might come back. But with a living funeral, there can be repercussions, right?
Well, these are events, that are very well attended, the few that I've done. And another kind of event that I've done is an in-home hospice concert. So if someone is unable to leave the house and they're homebound, I wouldn't really call it a celebration of life, just because this is a situation where someone is a lot closer to being terminal. I've had families hire me to make a concert program and come do a concert in the house because, grandma or grandpa used to love going to the New York Philharmonic or going to the opera, and they can't make it out for a concert. They're not going to make it out for another concert. And so I did an apartment concert with a cellist. So it was violin and cello duo, and we played Elgar, we played Bach, it was really a classical program, and it was just a small family affair, the siblings and the parents, and then there was like an intimate dinner. So that was like another kind of event that I realized that music can be these big celebratory things, and it can also be these private, shared home concert moments.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's an event or just it was a different vibe, than doing those big public events. But very special and unique in its own way.
Absolutely. Yeah. there's so many of my current clients that I can think of that would probably enjoy something like that, because that's such a
Yeah.
beautiful service, because so many people, especially in the New York area, are that would be an ideal bucket list item for them, that maybe they can't make it to Lincoln Center or whatever, and they used to go regularly or whatever it might be, or to the Met. It's to just sort of bring it into their living room.
Yeah, and it's funny because when I started Sound and Memory, I had initially thought of it specifically as music for funerals, but then all these other types of requests started coming up, and I thought, why not? Why can't I do that? Like, it's also about grief. It's also about death. Um,
Absolutely. Grief
yeah,
is not, that's, we were talking about my TED talk before sort of we were recording there. And if there's one thing what I love about it, not that I thought about it back then, but what I love about it is that it's sort of, the message is still applicable today, right? Even though it's, it was 9 years now. My God, where's I'm going? But the point is that grief and loss aren't just specific to human life loss.
yeah,
It's not just, people can be devastated and grieving over a divorce, over a job loss, over losing a necklace or something. Like, it is what weight we put on the person, whatever it is that we have lost. And that is so personal and unique to everybody. And so grief is not just about death of a human being. It can be so many different things. It could be, even, there's a friend of mine who, she's been in hospital, and I won't go into too many details, but has lost her voice. And so it's like that loss, especially if you were a singer or maybe somebody who was very vocal, that is a massive loss. And so maybe having somebody, the music you used to sing or whatever it might be, having something, there's so many different avenues. It really is.
yeah, it's interesting. I really believe in creating ritual over those kinds of varied losses. Like you said, not just the loss of a human, but the loss of a home,
Yeah.
maybe somewhere that you lived. Maybe if you were in a big natural disaster and you
Yep.
lost your childhood home, or you lost, like you said, a job, a relationship. I think we can create ceremony to honor all of those things that pass. Um, and I was thinking about pet loss or animal loss, really, in general. I'm actually doing a workshop up at the Phoenicia Public Library on Saturday about pet loss. And I'm going to be performing a bunch of songs that I wrote in dedication to my dog, Mimi, who died in 2016. And I have also done music for pet funerals. So,
As important as humans.
yeah. Yeah, and I did a funeral for a Shih Tzu named Colby, and Shih Tzu this little Shih Tzu was already readopted when he was elderly, so he lived for 8 years with a woman who died in hospice, and then the second owner adopted him as a senior, and he lived another, like 8 years. And this owner was so devastated because she was like, "Oh, I didn't get to know him since he was a puppy, and I feel like I didn't love him enough." And I was like, "Are you kidding me? You gave this dog a second life.
Yeah.
He had a whole second life with you." And the song that we chose, you're gonna cry.
Oh God.
Oh, song that we sung at the grave site, because we buried the dog in the yard and it was raining and there was like dew on the grass, and we sang the Cat Stevens song, like the first morning, da 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 da. And it was raining, and there's lyrics in that song about the dewdrops and the life of the new day and the birds singing. It's all like kind of nature based. And um oh, we lost it. I can't lose it because I'm singing. I can't.
It's,
Yeah, I'm sure you can relate to that too, because you're there to serve the person that you're providing this service for, so you need to keep it together. And when I was first starting to do this work, I had an incident actually where I sang an extremely difficult Barbara Streisand song
Wow.
for a person who also died quite young, and it was tragic. And I sang it. I feel I sang it quite perfectly because my adrenaline was like, it was a on a clear day, rise and look around you, and you'll see who you are. Anyway, it was so hard to sing. I sing the song, everyone's losing it. I walk quietly out the door and just start bawling,
Oh,
crying outside the door. And someone came outside with their tissues and was like, "Are you okay? Do you want me to sit here with you while you get yourself together?" That was early days of doing this work. You have to, you have to, it's okay. I think it's okay, but
it is.
you get
Yeah.
used to it over time.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I actually get asked that by people coming into the business a lot. And I say two things. I'm like, first of all, when I started doing this business, I had a cremation jewelry line, and I opened an office. We were doing everything online, but I opened an office. And then all of a sudden people were coming in and just sitting with me and telling me the stories and crying and everything. And it used to kill me. Like I would take home all that grief. And so I eventually kind of closed up shop and kept everything online. Whereas now I'm back to dealing with people one-on-one a lot more. And I don't know whether it's age, whether it's being in it long enough, or I also think that it's I've sort of changed it in my brain insofar as now my heart grows whole, like bigger, should I say, every service that I do, because I know, I only said this to somebody the other day on the phone. I was like, I know that I would have had to go through this loss without me, regardless. So with or without me, this person has passed away. And I know with me, I am providing protection, and as I always say, that I'm the best friend you never wanted to need because you didn't want to lose your person, but I hold your hand. And so I flipped the process. And I think probably because where I'm from in Ireland, it's sort of, you're not allowed to have what we call notions about yourself. So we're not allowed to have any sort of confidence or think we're any good at anything. It's terrible. But I think moving to America also flipped it a little bit for me as well. Whereas now I know, I'm like, no, I am damn good at what I do. And I know that I'm providing this beautiful service to these people. And so with me is better than without me. And so it's changed in my brain. But I still am a mess sometimes after the services. And even like in my celebrant training course, my advice to you is absolutely feel the emotion. It is okay to feel the emotion. Where you need to be professional enough is to hold it together to a certain degree. You never knew the deceased, typically, right? You never knew the deceased unless you're a friend of the family and they're asking you to sort of do this. And so you can't turn into like an Irish banshee where you're wailing and throwing yourself on the casket. You can't, so it's okay to be reading a poem, singing a piece of music, introducing somebody, or maybe somebody has just spoken and I have to go back up to the podium and it was an emotional speech. It's okay to do
It's a lot to see somebody else do that too, by the way.
Absolutely.
Just a family member crying and falling into the casket and don't put it in the ground. And
oh God,
it's a lot to see that. I've seen that a few times. And it's like, yes, you kind of get used to it over time. I also had started kind of actively seeking around resources about this topic. And I don't know if you've seen, Barbara Carnes has a training video on her website called Care for the Caregiver. And it's basically a training video for anyone who works in end-of-life care industry, people who are hospice nurses or any kind of end-of-life care. But she said that as a hospice nurse, she would get assigned, this many clients in a week, and they would die, and then she'd just move on to the next clients. And she said one day she broke down crying on the floor and was like, all of these ghosts are following me, and just lost it. And she realized that, first of all, like you said, that person is not your person necessarily. You don't know them. You don't necessarily know them intimately. Sometimes if you're a death doula or a nurse, you may have worked with them before they died, and that can be really, really painful. And so, but Barbara encourages you to look at your own grief and your own losses in your personal life and the ones that are unresolved, because every death brings up all the personal things.
Yeah.
So she encourages you to work on that. And also, one thing I really like
In your own shit.
yeah, and one thing I really liked that she said is allow yourself to memorialize people in your own way, if either by going to their memorial or creating some kind of memorial for yourself. If it's like, having listening to a song that they enjoyed, or something that honors your grief. It's like you just have to like acknowledge it and make space for it. There's no way that you can work, go, go, go when you do this kind of work.
Yeah.
Man.
100%. And I think each of us has to find our own way. And I know for me, like I'm an intuitive person, and I believe whatever the things I believe, never force them on anybody else. But I know for me, I definitely get signs when I'm working with a family. So like the wildest things, like a ladybird will show up where I never would see a ladybird for 10 years. I'm not even joking you. Like right now, I'd say I've seen maybe 2 ladybirds in the last 10 years. And both of those ladybirds showed up exactly when I was working with a young woman who had passed, whose thing was ladybirds. You guys call them ladybugs over here. I think we call them ladybirds in Ireland.
Yeah.
And small things like I was on my way to meet a family, a woman who'd lost her husband. She was absolutely devastated. It was at the height of COVID. And I was on my way to meet her at the funeral home. And I passed by, as very classic New York, a lamppost, a light posting. And there was, these, all, the way that they always have rent here, or, all these different signs that people have slapped onto them, like whatever. And I never pay any attention to these signs because it's just a light post and I'm just walking past it. This one particular time I was paused at the traffic lights and I happened to look at this light post, and on it was the man's name, the deceased name, and phone numbers to pull because he was looking for an apartment. I was just like, just small little things, but things that would never have sort of been in your day regularly, but all of a sudden you're noticing. Yeah, it's just, there's so many bonkers things, but it is interesting. You did touch on a point that controversially, this might be a bit controversial, but I do believe it, is a death doula or a nurse, as you mentioned, that you may not know the deceased. And so I personally do think it is better to have somebody officiate, like it's a celebrant or somebody to keep it together, who is that little bit step removed, which is where I go back to a death doula has their lane. The nurses have their lane, a funeral director has their lane, a celebrant has their lane, a musician. I just personally think everybody should be an expert at what they do and work together to make the service. Now, I know that's not always possible. It's not always feasible. I've had so many families who've wanted a celebrant but maybe can't afford it, or for whatever reason. I'm like, there is nothing. Listen, have a family member do it. Absolutely. But having that person who is a little bit one step removed and can sort of a little bit more logically and professionally bring the service together, I do think helps, because I can only imagine, and I'm not a death doula, but I can only imagine if I had to sit and hold the hand of a dying person and then have to stand, I would not be able. Like, I would not be able.
Yeah, so I have been in that position.
Would not be able.
So I am a death doula, and I do work with people before they die, choosing and making plans about their memorial, specifically about their music. And I do sit bedside and I sing at bedside and I provide music at bedside. And there was one instance, like you said, where the whole thing just kind of happened so quickly that I ended up being the person who was the death doula sitting bedside. And then 4 or 5 days later was also the person doing the music for the funeral. And it was good. Like in the moment, like I was so incredibly focused. I really wanted to honor this person. Um, I sang Mozart's Lacrimosa solo,
Girl,
breath, and Lacrimosa. I sang that, and I also sang. I don't know if you know this singer. It's a song called "Runaway" by a singer named Aurora. I was running far away. Would I run off the world someday? And I did that, and I sang, and I played some of my original songs that this person really liked. So I did the whole music program with speeches, and this was just like a few days after this person died. Everything just happened so quickly. So it was all beautiful and good, but I cannot tell you how exhausted I was from that.
yeah,
I mean, exhausted.
yeah,
Like you said, doing both sides with the same person
yeah.
before and after death. Sure, I can do it if it needs to happen. It is an exceptionally difficult thing. Like I wouldn't recommend doing it that way as standard practice.
Well, that's exactly it. Like at the end of the day, especially with funerals, they're not like weddings where we have tons of time and money to plan. So you do whatever you can do in the
You
moment,
do
and
you do what you can. Yeah, you do what
exactly.
you can try. I mean, I see funeral directors that go above and beyond and do guests that are like way outside of their
Absolutely, you do what you can.
uh,
And not everything is going to be picture perfect, and it's not to say, you know, that anybody that your celebrant should be clinical and not know anybody and the funeral director the same. It's not to say that at all. It's that just sometimes it can be a cleaner movement. Like for example, in that situation for you, had there been budget and maybe more time, it might have been nice for you to work with another musician to do all of the things that that person wanted, you know, so that you're still a part of it. Because even I know from working with family members who are going up to speak, you know, or friends who are going up to speak. And I always give them the option of, listen, write your words down. And if on the day it becomes too much, then let me carry that load for you. Like, let me say the words. You can stand beside me because it's a lot. I've worked with like Broadway stars whose friend has passed and they've participated in it, and I know they flip a switch where it's a professional, just, you know, right, we're going to do this one song, but one song is very a performance when you know the person is very different to carrying the whole service, whether that's musically or through words as a celebrant. Very different. So well done to you. Wow.
it's like after it's over though, you collapse like
Oh yeah.
inflated balloon. You're
Yeah.
just like, okay, this was a lot. This was, you know, I feel like this brings up a broader topics. This brings up a broader topic of kind of the lack of resources in end of life care and end
Yep.
of life spaces. And to some extent, I'm extremely grateful for my deaf doula training because it allows me to step up and fill gaps and know the broader picture and know quite a lot more about what I'm doing working in end of life space. At the same time, when you have such a broad skill set, you do kind of end up being the one who steps
Yeah.
up and does this and does that. And like, it doesn't have to be one person. And I have developed a network of deaf doulas that I also work with who do work with creating advanced directives or having conversations around specific end of life plans so that, you know, if I'm working with one client and I'm thinking, okay, this is getting too involved,
Yeah.
I'm involved in too many angles of this, I can refer it out. But that one instance that I described to you was really a learning experience for me. I mean, in some ways it was like proving, okay, I can do this, but also like, should I be, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, it's yeah, I always come back to the analogy of nobody is the Cheesecake Factory except the Cheesecake Factory, as in nobody knows, and even the Cheesecake Factory. I mean, that's the reason why I say that is like their menu, their book full of different cuisines, you know, and they're pretty good Italian, even pretty good Irish. I'll give them pretty good Mexican. Like they're pretty good at everything. And I feel like you're better off. Like I would never dabble with music. I would never dabble with flowers. I would never, you know, bring in the experts that make
Yeah.
it good. Like my role is to sort of keep everything ticking over and managing everything and everyone. And yeah, it's just,
I hope that people like you and I, like, we can kind of pioneer diversifying this end of life space, this industry, because there's just so little knowledge about all the pieces that need to come together.
Yeah.
And people think like, oh, it's just the funeral director or
Yeah.
whatever, because we just don't talk about it that much. And people do sort of end up planning things a bit last minute. And the more that we do, like these podcasts and educational workshops, it gets people thinking a little bit earlier on about seeking out the diversity of resources that they might need at some point.
Yeah. No,
I get so many last minute phone calls.
Yeah.
And sometimes I can't take it because I'm booked, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
But if you knew that your person was quite elderly or quite sick, if it's not a sudden thing, it's good to start, planning and get help, like seek out support from people who are professionals and who've done this thing before.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Thank you so much. Before we go, since you've been so voluntary in sharing a tune, do you want to share with us a little snippet of the name of your company, the like the Sardinian song?
Oh, do you want me to sing it?
I would love it.
Okay. So this song called Sound and Memory is originally from Sardinia. My background is Sicilian, which is quite close to Sardinia. And
two of my bucket list places. I haven't gotten to either, but want to.
So this song is actually in the Sardinian language. So it's a mix of Greek and Spanish and Italian and all sorts of things. So I had to phonetically write the lyrics to pronounce it correctly.
Quando a sa mente mia tu edi parar, che in sono del memoria mi schidar, in coro mi brugian sasto allara, amentos qui m'aberin sas feridas, Britenes una volta non mi ignorar, chi mi amaste tanto e tanto amo. Si duer in su mundo tanto amore, qu'amare dante sì tanto dolore.
Yeah. Excellent. Very good. Yeah. Very good. Well, that's a great way to end the episode. Thank you so much for being a guest, Concetta. And we watch with bated breath all the things that you're going to do. So.
Thank you.